We have built the most powerful brains in human history, but we have forgotten how to feed them. In the architecture of global AI, compute is no longer the sole bottleneck. The fastest processor on the planet is a prisoner of its own inputs. If the data cannot move, the intelligence does not exist. We have mastered the design and the forge. Now, we must master the flow. Welcome to the Icheon Shield. Welcome to SK hynix. To understand the gravity of this shift, we must look beyond the silicon triad we have analyzed so far: the precision of ASML, the execution of TSMC, and the design of NVIDIA. They have provided the mind and the body, but SK hynix provides the circulatory system. For most people, memory sounds like a commodity, a component, a technical detail. But in the architecture of modern AI, memory has become something else entirely: a strategic layer of power, a gatekeeper of scale, and one of the most important choke points in the global race for artificial intelligence. We are no longer discussing a chip supplier. We are discussing the company that helps determine how far intelligence can expand.
Chapter 1: The von Neumann Paradox.
For decades, the world assumed that faster processors would automatically produce faster systems. But that assumption has reached its limit. The constraint is no longer only computation. The constraint is movement. Data must travel between processing units and memory, and that movement has become one of the defining bottlenecks of the AI era. In the current architectural landscape, large-scale models have transitioned from being compute-bound to being memory-bound. This means that even the most advanced H100 or Blackwell clusters can sit idle, starved for data, while the processor waits for the memory layer to keep up. This is the modern expression of the von Neumann bottleneck. Standard memory architectures were never designed for this scale. For decades, memory was treated as a low-margin commodity, a generic, interchangeable part that any foundry could stamp out. But as compute accelerated, this cheap afterthought became a cage. The result is a structural imbalance: systems capable of extraordinary computation, constrained by the speed of data access. A processor without sufficient bandwidth does not reach its potential. It waits. And at scale, waiting becomes inefficiency, cost, and lost capability. This is not a temporary limitation. It is a structural boundary in the architecture of computing.
Chapter 2: Survival Architecture, the 2013 Leap.
Long before artificial intelligence became a global priority, SK hynix made a decision that would define its future position in the industry. Instead of optimizing conventional memory, it pursued a different architecture: high-bandwidth memory. This strategic foresight was solidified in 2013, when JEDEC officially adopted HBM as the global industry standard, a move based directly on the prototype pioneered by SK hynix. HBM redefined how memory is structured. Instead of spreading horizontally across a board, it stacks vertically, increasing proximity, density, and bandwidth. This required mastering through silicon interconnections, advanced bonding techniques, and thermal control at a level far beyond standard memory manufacturing. This was not a marginal improvement, it was a structural shift. The development of HBM demanded years of iteration, failure, and refinement. The resulting expertise is not easily replicated. It is embedded in process knowledge, manufacturing discipline, and engineering experience accumulated over time. The true moat for SK hynix is not just a stack, but the process. By mastering mass reflow molded underfill MR-MUF, they achieve thermal stability and production yields that competitors are still struggling to match. In a market where a 1% increase in yield translates to billions in market advantage, their manufacturing discipline, their ultimate defense. When demand for AI infrastructure accelerated, SK hynix was not reacting. It was already positioned. That is what transformed it from a participant in the memory market into a strategic node within the AI supply chain.
Chapter 3: The Silicon Triumvirate.
Artificial intelligence is not built by isolated companies. It is built by systems. At the center of that system is a tightly coupled structure. NVIDIA designs the compute architecture. TSMC integrates and packages the system. SK hynix provides the memory layer that enables scale. This is the Silicon Triumvirate. The relationship is physical, not conceptual. Through advanced CoWoS packaging, HBM is bonded directly to the GPU silicon. They operate as a single biological system, sharing the same thermal envelope and the same heartbeat. Within this architecture, there is no distinction between the processor and the path to its memory. Advanced AI systems depend on memory integrated directly into high-performance packaging environments. Bandwidth, latency, and thermal efficiency are determined at the system level, not by any single component in isolation. Remove one layer, and the system degrades. Misalign one layer, and the system slows. This creates a narrow and interdependent supply chain, where coordination is not optional, it is required. Within this structure, SK hynix does not merely supply memory. It defines the conditions under which the system can operate at full capacity.
Chapter 4: The Icheon Shield Geopolitics of the Bit.
Memory is no longer a commodity. It is a geopolitical asset. South Korea occupies a critical position in the global semiconductor landscape because its memory industry sits at the intersection of supply, demand, and strategic dependency. In the AI era, HBM has become part of national infrastructure, and infrastructure is never neutral. In this regime, expertise is not shared, it is guarded as a state secret. The engineers who master the HBM stack are treated as national security assets, legally anchored to the shield of Icheon, to ensure that the silent formulas of their manufacturing remain an impenetrable fortress. For the United States, securing advanced semiconductor capabilities is a strategic priority. For China, reducing dependence on external suppliers is an industrial imperative. For South Korea, the challenge is to remain indispensable while navigating pressure from both sides. This is the environment in which SK hynix operates. Its production, its technology, and its expertise are no longer purely commercial. They are embedded in a global contest over technological sovereignty, the control of memory bandwidth, now influences the speed at which nations can develop artificial intelligence systems, deploy them, and integrate them into their economies and defense structures. In this context, memory becomes more than a component. It becomes leverage.
Chapter 5: Thermodynamics, the final boss of AI.
As artificial intelligence scales, it encounters a fundamental constraint: physics. Increasing bandwidth, stacking memory, and integrating systems at higher densities introduces new challenges in heat dissipation, energy consumption, and system stability. Every gain in performance introduces new demands on infrastructure. This is the thermodynamic boundary of AI. HBM enables scale, but it also exposes the cost of that scale. More bandwidth requires more energy. More density generates more heat. More complexity increases the difficulty of manufacturing and maintaining these systems. The frontier is now defined by a new metric of power: terabytes per watt. The challenge is no longer just moving data, but moving it without melting the system. As we approach the thermodynamic limits, the winner of the AI race will not be the one who computes the fastest, but the one who moves data with the least thermal resistance. Ultimately, the future of the frontier is defined by the ability to sustain performance under these crushing physical constraints. The ultimate frontier of the intelligence race is no longer whether a machine can think, but whether the planet's infrastructure can survive the cost of cooling its thoughts. In this environment, SK hynix sits at a critical junction, the point where computational ambition is physical limitation, and that junction will define the next phase of artificial intelligence. The history of technological power is the history of invisible constraints. Each era is defined not only by what can be built, but by what limits its expansion. In the age of artificial intelligence, that limit is no longer only compute, it is memory. SK hynix does not control the entire system, but it operates at one of its most critical layers. And in complex systems, critical layers shape outcomes. Compute does not scale in a vacuum. Memory bandwidth is the fundamental velocity of intelligence. And in that reality, bandwidth has become the ultimate form of industrial power. But as we secure the silicon, the execution, the compute, and now the memory, a final question remains: who owns the invisible blueprints that all these global powers are forced to use? Because it is useless to control manufacturing and memory if the instructions for how they must think already have an architectural owner in the shadows, an invisible blueprint that neither the United States nor China has been able to replicate. This is not just a technical insight, it is a structural reality, because the next node is the source code of power. This has been a Silicon Node Intelligence Briefing. Follow the money, follow the nodes. If you value this level of industrial intelligence and want to stay ahead of the disruptive trends shaping 21st century and beyond, join us.
We are Silicon Node Reports, and this was SK hynix, the Icheon Shield, South Korea's secret weapon in the AI war. Subscribe to Silicon Node Reports. Let's decode the future of the world's most critical supply chains together. Silicon Node Reports, the infrastructure of global capital.